macOS Mojave has arrived, but should Mac fans be excited?
And why is the Apple Watch outshining the iPhone? Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin. Welcome to Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, where we talk to Australia's leading technology journalists to get the stories behind the news of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined by a man who swears he's done nothing to influence the ABC board, at least not this week.
Nothing
Alex
at all.
Kidman. Nothing at all, nothing to see here, as we go behind the headlines in search of the big picture. This week, we're once again joined by freelance technology journalist and longtime Apple watcher, Matthew J.C. Powell. Matthew, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me again.
This week, Apple's released macOS Mojave, and as always, there's plenty of hype around why you should upgrade. Plus, we'll get up close and personal with the new Apple Watch 4. But first, over to the news desk. Alex, what's happening in tech news?
Amazon's announced a bevy of new Alexa-powered devices in the US, and for once we won't have to wait months to see them down under, with refreshed Echo and Echo Dot speakers, along with the second-generation Echo Show landing here from the 11th of October. There's still plenty of stateside-only Alexa action we won't see, however, including a $60 Alexa-ready microwave. Hey Alexa, please burn my house down. No, wait, don't!
Google has celebrated the 20th anniversary of Google Search by adding a few new features. Google Discovery preemptively adds information of interest to the google.com homepage on mobile devices, while Activity Cards helps you keep track of previous searches when researching a topic. Google is also spicing up the knowledge graph, which appears at the top of many search results, now breaking it down into subtopics so it's easier than ever to go on a deep dive into a subject.
NBN Co has announced that it started an upgrade process for its fibre transit network to raise capacity up to 19.2 terabits per second, up from a previous peak of 9.6 terabits per second. Before you start drooling at all that bandwidth, it's a slow rollout process that so far encompasses a link between Eastern Creek and Asquith in Sydney for fixed-line customers, and one between Brisbane and Darwin to cover Skymaster satellite customers. As always, the speed you'll see from an NBN connection has far more to do with what your telco has purchased from NBN Co in capacity terms.
The latest version of Google's Chrome web browser has upset privacy advocates by automatically logging the browser into a user's Google account when they log into any Google service. It's a frustrating change if you rely on multiple Google accounts or if you simply strive to keep your digital identity separate. Google has backed down on the issue and is promising a workaround, although it won't be released for at least another month. Meanwhile, in what appears to be a related issue, the latest version of Chrome also fails to delete Google's cookies when you clear the browser data, which makes it just that bit easier for Google to keep tabs on you.
So Adam, Google Discover sort of sounds like a credit card, if I'm honest. But instead, it's Google's latest attempt to get us to love search again. Do you think they've got a chance? Can these plucky upstarts make it?
It's been 20 years, and yes, the plucky upstarts perhaps have been kind of successful, but I think the first thing I'd be tempted to spend that Google Discover card on is a $60 Amazon microwave oven. So just before we jump into this, are they seriously selling microwave ovens for $60?
I believe that is the price, and the idea is that this is a microwave oven that you put your microwave popcorn in and you say, cook my microwave popcorn, so that you don't have to remember that it said on the packet, cook for 60 seconds, unless, of course, it thinks that your microwave popcorn is a potato because it didn't understand you, and then your house burns down.
Yeah, great. I'll take 3. So yes, apart from that, what else would you use for your Google Discover card? Yeah, Google's, to be honest, they kept this announcement really tightly close to their chest. They didn't want to talk about it beforehand, and I was honestly expecting something a bit more substantial than this. These really are just tweaks, and with this, really, Google's hoping that it's third time's a charm, because Google Discover is actually just a rework of Google Feed, which, if you remember, is just a rework of Google Now. So it's just that thing that pops up on your phone and says, hey, you might be interested in this, or don't forget you've got to go there, but it's all part of this bigger picture to sort of make Google a bit more preemptive and easy to deal with. Matthew, what is it that you want from Google? What do you want it to chirp up and tell you?
I would really mainly like Google to go away. I find that Google is at its most useful the more it knows about me, and well, I don't like it knowing so much about me. I don't know. We've had this discussion before about computers that seem to you use the term preemptively adding useful information or adding things that are of interest. Like, well, I don't want my computer to preempt what I want it to do. I want my computer to do things when I want it to do it. I don't like being anticipated. That feels very, I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave.
Yeah, it does a little. But for most people, they've got to strike a balance, and they're prepared to put up with that for a certain level of convenience. What level of convenience? What would it be that Google could do? Google, make me a cup of tea. Like, what would it have to do before you go, yeah, okay, I'm prepared to sacrifice that because the return is so great?
Look, I suppose being able to say, tea Earl Grey hot, and have a cup of tea appear somewhere would be nice.
You've got to say it in an English accent while pretending to be a Frenchman, though.
Yes.
Frankly, I think if I turned around to my computer and I said, "Computer, tea Earl Grey hot," and what I would really want is for it to say, of course it's hot, it's tea. I want preemptive sarcasm from my computer.
What I was going to say, Matthew, you don't want it preemptive. Would you be happy? Because the other side of this is this activity cards thing, which to me seems like it's looking back. It's going, hey, you searched for this if you start to search for the same thing. I could see some utility in that. And at the same time, it has still that same creepy factor of, hang on, Google remembers that, I looked for that interesting leather harness a few weeks ago, which was obviously perfectly innocent, but it knows these things.
Yeah, and especially when you are in a multi-person household and you have children, for instance, and you say, okay, hey, Google, I'm interested in leather goods because I need a new handbag or something, or a pair of sandals, and it says, oh well, here are the leather goods that you've searched for before.
Funny you should ask.
And all of a sudden. My kids know far more than I want them to.
Oh, you know far more than you want to.
Or
Either
I know
way,
far more
good.
than they want me to. And
yeah.
Google, how do I get out of this awkward conversation?
At which point the microwave burns your house down.
Just to break the tension. The whole thing is that Google wants this to become more of an interactive two-way conversation. And all of these adjustments are just making it more easy. I think they've almost got in mind this like Tony Stark Jarvis idea of you can just have a natural language conversation with this thing, and it knows what you're talking about. It knows your preferences. It knows the context, and you can just have a back and forth and it'll tell you what you want. Whereas right now, talking to Google Assistant is a little bit more like talking to Holly on Red Dwarf than it is talking to Jarvis.
So, Adam, we've got a new version of macOS. It's Mojave. It's time to head to the desert. But is this a lonely trek through the desert that people should be making?
Well, it's one of those things where fortunately it does go back for a few years. It looks like it will work on most Macs released in the last 5 or 6 years. There is a list online, but so it's not like there's this hard cutoff point. Sorry, you've got last year's Mac that you're missing out. But at the same time, it also doesn't seem to bring any real showstoppers. Now, Matthew, you've been following Mac OS for, say, we'll be polite and say many years. What do you think about Mojave? How does it stack up against High Sierra? Is it worth making the move?
Look, if you're on High Sierra, I would say, well, frankly, yes, it is worth the move simply because there's a few things that High Sierra tried to do or gave an indication that it was going to do that didn't really work as well as they should have. Mojave is a massive improvement on High Sierra in so many ways. I'm a user of an older Mac, 2011 model iMac. So I'm at this sort of edge of compatibility with Mojave, and some stuff doesn't quite work for me in Mojave, even though it says it does. Things like AirDrop, I can't get it to work. But I've never been
AirDrop's
able to
always been a bit twitchy in my
it's
experience.
it's always been flaky. AirDrop just doesn't want to have anything to do with my Mac, but that's okay. I've lived without it. But there's a lot of stuff that I do like cover flow has always been a neat view in the Finder, but it was kind of like, well, they brought this thing over from iTunes into the Finder so that you could look at your files as if they're album covers. That's pretty, but you can't do anything with them. Well, now they've renamed it. What do they call it? Gallery view. Yes, sorry. It's called gallery view. It's basically the same thing as cover flow, but you get things like metadata on photos. You can rotate photos without having to go into an application. You can do it right there. You can do things like if you do a quick view on a video, you can trim it right there in quick view. You don't have to go into an application. You can do some simple things in the Finder that you've kind of always felt like you should have been able to do.
Yeah.
So,
I've got to admit that new Finder stuff, the editing within Quick Look is really probably my favorite feature of Mojave. It's the thing that I've actually used that I would call a feature, because a lot of it feels like kind of tweaking around the edges and features which aren't features, like dark mode, it's a theme. It's not a feature. It's a color.
Exactly. And frankly, the dynamic desktop. Sorry, no. My desktop is in the background. I don't look at my desktop. I have work to do. Please stop using system resources to change my desktop through the day. That's a waste of time.
That kind of feels like an iOS-y thing creeping in a cutesy iPad thing trying to live on the desktop.
A little bit, except that you spend more time on iOS. You're looking at your desktop every time you quit an app. You go out to the desktop and then you go into the next app. On the Mac, you go from app to app to app to app. You don't spend a lot of time in your workflow on your Mac looking at the desktop. So why spend system resources on that? That's a waste. But speaking of the desktop, the single best thing in Mojave, which I've actually had some problems with, but it will be brilliant once I've got it sorted, is stacks. You've had stacks in the dock for ages. You can show sort of folders full of files, either as a folder or as a stack. Now you can get all the desktop clutter. I don't know how you live on your Macs, but my desktop is full of stuff, files and things all over the place. And you can tell the Finder, okay, give me a bunch of stacks, and it'll put all the PDFs into one stack, and all the documents in another stack, and all the screenshots in another stack, and it keeps them sorted. It stays that way. It's brilliant. Now, as it happens, I've got a third-party application, the name of which I should have grabbed before I started recording this, and I don't want to open it up now in case I wreck things, but I have a third-party app that kind of does a very similar thing, and Stacks doesn't like it very much. And so some stuff has kind
Apple
of
not playing well with others? I think I'm shocked.
I know, it's weird. But that's been the only mess. But the thing with that application is you had to keep updating it. You had to keep saying, okay, move things back into the folders. Stacks is persistent. You create a new file on the desktop, it automatically goes into the appropriate stack. It's brilliant.
It's persistent, but the one thing I found really interesting with it is that it's not the default. When you upgrade to macOS Mojave, it retains the old school have your mess everywhere all over your desktop view. You actually have to initiate stacks at least once for it to start. Yes. And I wonder, if is this a lack of confidence in it from Apple?
No.
Is
Look,
it?
I think it's a matter of, okay, I installed Mojave. Now I can't find anything because your stupid thing put it all into stacks. I want it back the way it was before. I think, they don't want to change people's workflows without them knowing. People have stuff on the desktop. They have printer shortcuts. They have all sorts of stuff. They work a particular way. So I think this is just Apple saying, okay, we're going to give you this great new feature. If you like it, you'll love it. If you don't need it, if this actually doesn't help you very much, it's invisible to you. Leave it alone.
We're not going to inflict it on you.
This is sort of my problem with it in a way, in that if you're not keen on OS tweaking, and we are obviously, and I would imagine a certain quantity of our listening audience would be, but if you're not into that kind of thing, you might never know it was there. It's that classic problem of building features, but if they're not promoted, what percentage of users are actually going to use them? I agree with you that Stacks is it's quite neat. It's quite a good way to deal with my very, very cluttered desktop habits. And perhaps rather than Stacks, it should be Smacks, and it should just be going, no, do it better, Alex. Don't just use our lazy way out. But it's there, and I will use it.
Yeah, look, obviously visibility is always going to be, or discoverability is always going to be an issue whenever you introduce a new feature. But I think Apple's done the communication on this one reasonably well.
So you're talking about system resources before. How does this run on old machines? Because there's a lot of talk that iOS 12 is pretty good with older devices. What about Mojave's? I think High Sierra. I know when I upgraded I got a 2012 MacBook Pro, and I recently upgraded it to High Sierra, and it has not been, we'll say, happy. I had to dial down a few things to get it to settle down. Am I likely to experience that same drop in performance again with Mojave?
No, you won't. It's not quite the boost that you got going from iOS 11 to iOS 12 on an older phone, where you really felt like, oh, hey, things are really snappy now. But I don't know, it feels a little less flaky. As I say, I've got a 2011 iMac here. I'm not going to tell you that this is a brilliant platform for running Mojave on. It is not. But it does okay. And I would say that applications launch a bit quicker than they did in High Sierra. And yeah, it feels less like, at the start of this recording, I had to upgrade Chrome to the latest version. That would have been a bit of a hassle for me under High Sierra. I wouldn't have been sure, for instance, that Chrome would start properly the first time I ran it after the upgrade under High Sierra, because I had a lot of problems with that, where I'd update something and then it would crash the first time I ran it. That didn't happen this time. So, there's some things that have been fixed.
There's also some things that have been broken, though. I mean, I found it fascinating. One of the details that emerged is that if you've got, I think it's a 27-inch 2012 iMac, and you're running Boot Camp, you can't actually install Mojave till you remove Boot Camp. And once you've done that, and once you've installed Mojave, you can't then run Boot Camp. It won't do it.
Really?
Yeah. And Apple has a full support doc on this. This isn't just kind of internet scuttlebutt. And while, in one sense, hey, a 6-year-old iMac is, a machine with a few miles on it. It's kind of impressive that they're allowing the upgrade at all. The fact that they're saying, right, and here's this other feature, which we've had through the other versions that you've been able to have. If you've got one of those, then, I would suggest actually genuinely holding off on Mojave if Boot Camp is important to you. Yeah. I wouldn't imagine it would be massively important to you, Matthew.
Not really, no. Not a big part of my life. I actually have to think for a moment whether I even have it on this Mac. I don't think I do. I think I removed it for space. The other thing I was going to mention was they've sort of introduced a proof of concept kind of feature with Mojave. I think they've called it Marzipan, which is a sort of a layer in which they can run iOS apps, certain iOS apps, and they've brought, of course, their stock market app from iOS, because
Everybody uses that.
Everybody follows the stock market
Look,
very
Tim
closely.
Cook needs to know exactly how rich he is.
At any
And it's
given
just up to
moment.
us to it's just up to us to follow. I think it's stocks, news,
voice memos, and home. So the home automation one.
Yeah.
News, of course, shows up in your dock. The other ones you have to go to Launchpad. Speaking of discoverability of features, who even remembers that their Mac has a thing called Launchpad?
Launchpad, yeah.
Well, there's a little rocket there to, remind you, hey, there's a thing called Launchpad, which you clicked on once when you installed it. And I can't even remember which version of macOS Launchpad came in. Matthew, you might be able to help me out here, or you might not. But yeah,
it was Leopard. It was Leopard.
It was Leopard. Wow.
Whoa, that's old school. Yeah. So one of the things that they often seem to be doing with new versions of macOS is polishing this whole, I think it's continuity is what they call the handover between macOS and iOS.
Sorry, I've lost you.
Are there more improvements there?
Yeah, well, it has this thing where you can take photos and videos on your phone and have them immediately sort of transferred over to your Mac. Which is part of the continuity thing, which is continuity camera they call it, and you can scan a document and have it sort of come over to your Mac as if you have used a scanner.
That would be handy.
Which is kind of cool. And the thing is, it works on my 2011 iMac, and so it's a better way for me to get things from my phone to my Mac than AirDrop, which is
the ever reliable AirDrop.
Probably not the way that they want me to use it, but well, look, I think what they want me to do is buy a new Mac, isn't it? But no, continuity camera is quite good, actually.
I wonder on that, actually, because I've spent, a considerable part of the last week playing with the new iPhone XS Max. Lovely phone, horrifically expensive, but very, very powerful without a kind of feature that uses that power. And I wonder if continuity isn't where Apple's going with this, in that they're producing, and they're making a lot more money out of their phones, of course, but they're producing these wildly powerful phones. But the smartphone market is quite mature. We know this. And it needs that kind of next stage killer app. I wonder, given they've kind of said, no, we're not going to turn macOS into iOS, we're not going to merge the code bases. I wonder if the end game there isn't so much, Matthew, we want you to buy a newer Mac, as, Matthew, we want you to buy the iPhone XS's successor, probably, which will be your Mac, which will be your little virtual desktop. Right now, you can use continuity camera, but in the future, they start pushing more towards what, for example, Samsung has done with DeX, but you could do with Windows phones for a time, and even going back to the Motorola Atrix, that idea that the phone would be the computer, because I've seen a bunch of benchmarks that suggest that the A12 Fusion is actually more powerful than a bunch of Macs, some of which I think can run Mojave.
It's an interesting idea. I think, the kind of work that I do, I will never be able to do purely on a phone. So, I can't see myself not ever having ever not having a desktop computer. It's not really practical as a writer,
If the phone was effectively, to use a modern context, a Mac Mini that you just dropped in front of your keyboard and screen and could be a cinema display or that kind of thing, and it just used its processing power, because they're
like the old Motorola Atrix.
I get what you mean now. Yes, okay. Okay. That would justify the price.
Well, there is that.
Something has to.
Yeah, something needs to. Let's be honest here. But. So for the moment, though, with Mojave, I think we've kind of established that a reasonable upgrade even for the older systems. I am left wondering where they go now, given that even Mojave itself, and obviously there are some performance and security upgrades that people shouldn't ignore, but even now it still feels they're tweaking around the edges, aren't they?
I don't know. I've felt with the past couple of updates to macOS that there was a lot of more trimming around the edges than doing something that was actually, feature important. Here, I think that they've done some things that maybe people won't like as much, like removing the integration with Facebook and with Twitter. It's a bit more of a sandboxed thing than it was in some previous versions, but that is in the interests of privacy, in the interests of security. And they've done some other security stuff about making it harder for advertisers to follow you around, giving generic information about your computer instead of specific information about your computer, that kind of thing, which I think it shows an emphasis on privacy and security that has perhaps been a shift in direction for it. And I think a lot of the functionality that they've built into the Finder, they haven't really done anything to the Finder for quite some time. The fact that it starts to end of life some 32-bit apps. The next version of macOS, whatever it's called, will not support 32-bit apps. So we're going to have another apocalypse like we had on iOS. It's there's some more fundamental stuff happening here. Not all visible stuff, but I think they are actually changing the operating system in ways that are perhaps more interesting and more fundamental to the way that people work than the last few versions of macOS have been.
So, Alex, of all the new Apple toys that have come out recently, the Apple Watch seems to be the one that's getting the most attention in some ways. What is it that makes the Apple Watch shine?
Well, partially the price point, because if you spend that much money, you'd want it to be quite nice and shiny. But I've been testing that out alongside the XS Max, and if you'd asked me pre the launch event, was I excited about a new Apple Watch, I would have said, no, not really. They're nice, but they're not essential, and they're just the Apple Watch, really. They're smartwatches, and I'm someone who likes a smartwatch. I always wear a smartwatch.
Several, even.
Sometimes when I can get away with it, when people aren't noticing. But the thing that surprised me is I think the new Apple Watch is actually the thing I like the most out of that launch. It's the thing where they've done refinements that make sense. And while they haven't reinvented the smartwatch, they haven't come up with that killer feature that means, you've got to have a smartwatch in the same way that the iPhone, whilst it was borrowing from previous ideas, made it fairly essential for a lot of people to have a smartphone. They haven't done that yet. It's still a nice to have. It's not a must have. But they've taken the core thing that smartwatches do well, which is information, notifications, that kind of thing, and they've just made it really seamless. They've made it work really, really well. And critically, they've made it work a lot better than competing Android Wear or Samsung's Tizen-based Gear devices.
So, Matthew, do you have an Apple Watch strapped to your wrist, and are you thinking about upgrading?
I do not have one. I have never had one. And I still don't see the Apple Watch 4 as Alex says. There's still nothing there that says to me, I have to have one. I've hardly ever worn a watch since I got an iPhone.
I'm the same.
One of the things smartphones did was all of a sudden you had an extremely handy device with you that told you the time. So I have one of those. So putting another one on my wrist, well, I want it to do something else that is extremely useful to me. That my smartphone doesn't do, and so far I'm not really seeing that from the Apple Watch. Not really. I think it's getting closer, but it's not quite there yet.
And I think that's a perfectly fair criticism. I am someone who very much likes wearing a watch, and Apple emphasizes that kind of watchiness of it, which might seem like an obvious point, in that they do so many band combinations, so many styles, and so many things that look like classic watches for people who like wearing watches. If you hate wearing a watch, this is not going to work for you. And you're not wrong. You can always pull your phone out of your pocket and find out what the time is. And while you can go the whole eSIM route and have this as slightly standalone, it's not 100% standalone. you're more than likely going to have your phone on you. One of the more interesting things with the new Apple Watch, of course, is that it actively wants me to hurt myself. It's the only conclusion I can come to. I think it's because I said...
It's not alone in that.
Oh,
I was
for
going to
sure.
say it's due to popular demand.
There's a line. There's a line. I'm aware of this. And I think it's probably because I said the iPhone XS was a little bit too expensive. But specifically, it has this new feature of fall detection, where basically if you fall and you are prone for a period of time, it'll vibrate the watch, it'll put an alert up, and if you don't respond to that, it will call emergency numbers. And the idea is that you give this to someone who's elderly or infirm, and if they have a fall, it acts like an emergency bracelet of sorts. And it's kind of neat technology. It's slightly ageist because Apple does not switch it on by default unless you are over 65. So you actually have to activate it, and you've got to activate it, in fact, funnily enough, from an iPhone. You can't activate it from the watch itself. But even so, I've been trying to fall over without hurting myself, but so that I can kind of see how it looks and how it runs. And I still can't do it. I'm not quite prepared to go head first into the concrete to find out, but it almost feels like it wants me to do that. It almost feels like it's challenging me. But this health side of it, I think, is perhaps where they've made some of their biggest moves. Aside from the screen, I love the display. I love the fact that it's bigger and it makes more sense. But that's, to me, the health side of it might be the area, and I'm not suggesting that you are in terrible health, Matthew, but it might be the area where it has greater appeal to you for things like the fall detection, and eventually, once it arrives and it's not here yet, the ability to do it, things like an ECG and better heart rate tracking.
Yeah, the heart rate tracking, actually, when I because as it happens, my father has atrial fibrillation. So when they were talking about the Apple Watch being able to detect that, I thought, well, this may be a reason to get him an Apple Watch. But then, that feature is not going to be in Australia for some time. So, that starts to be the kind of feature that would make me interested in it. Not so much for myself, because of course I'm an elite athlete with
as we know,
perfect cardiac condition, but my father is not so much, and so it would be handy. I think that at some point they need to build in functionality where if you fall down, it evaluates how funny was that, and automatically uploads the video to YouTube.
There's a monetary stream right there, yeah, definitely.
And that could help to pay your hospital bill, so
it's
a win-win.
It could.
Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Matthew for joining us for the show.
And thank you for putting up with me.
And as always, we love to get your feedback on the show. So if you've got thoughts on macOS Mojave, on Google Discover, or on why the Apple Watch is great or terrible, let us know via Twitter or the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
Thanks everyone for listening. And remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. Vertical Hold, Behind the Tech News, is proudly brought to you by Belkin. What was that?
That was my watch going bing. Oh, shut up.
Sorry,
that was an Apple Watch.
Right, that was you. All right.
That was me, so... No, not that one. Bloody thing. Shut up. Shut up!
Tell us how good these Apple Watches are, Alex.
They're awesome. They're bloody awesome. Except when you tap on the wrong thing because you're an idiot.